Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be talking about a very sensitive topic for most people. Reason being is for most people they list out a few things as to why there's no point in being a sprinter, or why they're never going to be fast as a sprinter. So they're like, I'm not black, I'm not born Jamaican, I'm not 6'3", 6'2", or at least 6 foot. I'm tiny, and all these other things. Essentially, what they're getting at is they have poor genetics, and this couldn't be any further from the truth. Reason being is there's only one thing that will influence how quickly you can sprint, and that is the amount of fast twitch muscle fibers you have. From person to person, the amount of fast twitch fibers do vary, and generally black people tend to have more fast twitch fibers than other races, which is why they're so dominant when they're sprinting. But it's just a starting point. It's just a starting point. There's other things you can do. For example, you don't start off with the most amount of fast twitch muscle fibers the day you're born. You have to build them. Even now, to where you are right now, even if you're not a sprinter, you have fast twitch muscle fibers. Your body has to have them. And I don't care if you're running 15 seconds or sub 10 or the world record, you had to gain more fast twitch muscle fibers. And this is where we get to the point where genetics is the only factor. And that is a gene called the ACTN3, which you get two of. And and they're separating the two different types, a working version and a non-working version. So I mean, generally it's like you get two, so you might get two of the working version, one of each, or two of the non-working version. But generally most people have one of this gene, and what this gene does is it makes protein which allows your body to be able to gain fast twitch muscle fibers. And if most people have at least one of these genes, because that's necessary to become an elite sprinter, then think about this. Why is it that there's so few people who are running sub 10 compared to the people who aren't running sub 10? And it just comes down to this mental belief that it's never going to happen. Because if you actually was to like study different sprinters, I don't care what race, you'd notice that regardless of what country they're from, get a wide variety of other people from a multitude of countries, they also have this gene. It's just something most people have, unless you are just the most unluckiest person in the world, which I highly doubt is the case. You probably have this gene. So if that's the case, this gene only allows you to transfer, meaning you need to do hard work to actually get faster. It allows you to transfer any work you've done into a fast twitch manner, which means all the elite sprinters, they don't have better genetics than you. They may, but it's not that they have better genetics than you, because genetics only equals talent, and talent is similar to being here and them being here. But this is just a starting point. You can both get to here. It's just to get to here, you're gonna have to put in more work than they would to get to there, but it's not by much. Which means the reason why they were able to go sub 10 and you wasn't able to go sub 10 is because they actually put in the effort. And it's not just they put in the effort, because anyone can put in the effort to try and sprint and try and get faster, but they put in the effort in a smart direction. That's what actually allowed them to do what they did. And the reason why, I'm going to come back to the height, the reason why I say height isn't too big of a factor in sprinting is because depending on what your height is, you have various advantages. For example, the shorter athlete you are, or the tinier your legs are, then a better drive phase for 60 meters you're going to have. The taller the legs you are, the slower the start will be, but the faster the end will be. But here's the thing, speed is stride length times stride frequency. And stride length, if you want to have a great stride length, let's just use height. If you want to have great stride length, you should obviously would try to be as tall as possible, because then your stride length is really long. If you want to have a great stride frequency, then obviously the choice here would be to be really short, because then the frequency can be really quick. But both of these are just ultimate spectrums on one side, but you need both of these, which means if you're not tall, if you're not short, you're essentially perfectly built for a sprinter, just right in the middle. Bang, that's perfect. That's what you want to be. But if you're too tall, is just fine. You have a good stride length. Now, if you haven't maximized your stride length, continue to try and maximize that and then focus on improving your frequency, which you can do. How do you know you can do this? Well, he's an anomaly, you got Usain Bolt. He has frequencies that are equivalent to people that are like 2, 3, 4 inches shorter than he is, which means it doesn't matter how tall you are, as long as you work on improving your frequency, it can happen. And most likely you're not 6'5" like Usain Bolt was. So there's no way you need to be suffering and panicking and saying, I'm not going to be able to get as fast as a sub 10 sprinter is, because if you're not as fast, you're not as tall as Usain Bolt was, leg wise, not even as height wise, but mainly just in legs, then you being able to get frequency shouldn't be too hard. And in fact, you should be able to get even more frequency. I'm not saying you're going to break the world record, but at the very least you would be able to run faster. And now if stride length's the problem, well, here's the thing. Stride length is a combination of two things. Frequency is just fast twitch muscle fibers. Just one thing you really need to work on. Fast twitch muscle fibers, working on being more relaxed, and I guess improving your biomechanics. So this is for both. So work on being more relaxed and improving your amount of fast twitch muscle fibers you have will allow you to improve your stride frequency. Stride length is two things again. It's the amount of stride length you can get out of your body. So maximize that first. I don't care if you're 5 foot. Maximize the stride length you have, and then from there, the second thing is power. If you can improve the amount of power that you're able to sprint with, you're able to put into the force with every single step, that is going to allow you to have a longer stride length. Because think of it like this: when your foot lands on the ground, your leg travels back a bit, and that initial part is like when your foot's still on the ground, is all of the stride length your body, your biomechanics, your legs is allowed to get with the amount of mobility you have. So let's say that's 1.5 meters and you're able to sprint with a 2 meter stride length, which anyone can do. Then where's that other 0.5 meters of a stride length coming from if it's not your actual legs? Because you've checked the length of your legs, you've checked how far you can pull back your legs, and you've accounted for maybe being able to pull it back further whilst you're sprinting, and you didn't get a number even close to 1.5, let alone 2 meters. So how did you pull this off? Well, there's power. That's what you have. You have power. So if you want to be able to increase your stride length, you also need to be looking at maxing out the stride length your body's actually able to do, then improve the amount of power you're able to do. This means you're going to be doing a lot of plyometrics, you're going to be spending a decent amount in the gym to try and improve the amount of power you have. Which means now that we've got the genetics out of the way and we've debunked it and realized that it's not as big of a deal as we made it out to be, like, yeah, maybe you're not going to go sub 10, but at very least sub 11, after a while, it should be possible. Then what does that mean? I've been training for years and I'm still not sub 11. Well, there's various other factors. Genetics, again, is a minor factor, which means we're going to have to come back to this. We've gone over the main things that people think of as to why genetics is hindering their sprint ability. But what about the minor things? The things that we don't think about. Why don't we think about them? Because we can't see these things. And these are the things that are generally weak within your body. And I'm talking about your core and your hip flexors. And also, along with that, your mobility. So if you have a weak core, you're not going to be able to... Actually, let's start with hip flexors, because we can move on to the core from there. So the hip flexors, that's what determines, it's the main move in sprinting. And that's what allows your legs to lift up as high as possible, and then for you to produce power coming down. You want to be able to have hip flexors as strong as possible, because they're the midpoint. They're not just the midpoint between the entirety of your body, but they're also the starting point of power, which means the more energy and force your hip flexors are able to release, then the more force will be able to get transferred down through your body. And obviously, in just working on general strength will decrease the amount of energy leakages the rest of your legs have, so you're going to be able to get faster. But the weaker your hip flexors are, the less starting energy you're going to be able to have, which is kind of like every single step you take while sprinting is kind of similar to rolling a snowball down a hill, for example. If you give the snowball a slight push, it's gonna get down the hill, obviously, and it's gonna gather up more snow. It's gonna get big, but it's not gonna get down the hill as fast as we want. Think about the speed it takes to get down this hill to be your ground contact time, and then think about how hard. Like there's a wall at the very end of this hill. Think about how hard the snowball slams into that wall, being the force you produce. The harder you can, the faster you can get that snowball to fall down, is the greater velocity it's able to produce, and the harder it's able to hit that wall, which means your ground contact time will go down, as in the time it takes for that snowball to go down, and the amount of force you're able to produce into the ground will increase. And these two work in tandem together to decrease your ground contact times and allow you to produce more power. So making sure your hip flexors are strong is important, which means you need to train your hip flexors to be as strong as possible. If there's any weaknesses in your hip flexors, this is like, I don't care what exercise it is, I don't care how sissy it looks, do that exercise, because this is one of the few times where a gym exercise or just an exercise that works on muscles can directly improve your sprint times for the entirety of the 100, not just the 60 like how a squat can, or the final 40 how a deadlift potentially can. Along with the hip flexors next, like I said, is core. The reason why I had core second and not first, core is, I would say, more important than your hip flexors, though your core tends to be slightly stronger than your hip flexors are, because your hip flexors, after years of sedentary lifestyle, setting down, it's weakened and it's shortened, which means you're going to have to improve it. And your core is right next to your hip flexors. Your hip flexors are literally at your hips. And the stronger the core is, the higher you can lift your knees and the more force you're able to produce. Your core is also one of the starting points of the energy. It's not the main leg starting point, but it is one of the starting points of energy. It's able to neutralize energy leakages and is able to help your hip flexors produce more force. And how do we know it's able to produce more force? Well, how high you're able to lift your hips, your knee, which your hip flexors, one of the hip flexors or two is connected to, is determined by how strong your core is. If you have a weak core, you're not going to be lifting your knees very high, or if you have poor form. But say your form is good, if you have weak core, your knees aren't going to be being lifted up very high, and you're not going to be able to hammer down into the ground as strong as possible, and you might be all wobbly and stuff. You're just leaking energy because your body's not able to sustain the force you're producing, so it's trying to throw it off so it can continue to sprint without falling over itself. Which means if you want to be able to sprint, have less energy leakages, and improve the amount of power you're able to produce, your core is a must improve. And the third thing is mobility. The reason why mobility is important is because if you have a weak core, if you have weak mobility, essentially what happens is your muscles are locked, they're rigid. If I had a resistance button near me, I would show what I meant. But your muscles are locked and they're very tight, which means they're not able to elastically fire. If your muscles are tight, you're probably a very good starter or relatively okay. Like you could be at the lead of a few 100-meter races, but afterwards you're going to slow down. Reason being is your muscles are only able to fire at 8 meters per second. And if you're running faster than 8 meters per second, that means that if your body's able to run faster than 8 meters per second, that means it's gonna have to use something other than your muscles, which is your tendons. And if your muscles are tight, they can only fire in a really aggressive and tense way, which is gonna not be able to allow you to relax in any shape or form, because relaxation is very important if you want to be able to sprint faster, because relaxation allows the muscles to relax so the tendons can do their best. But you could be as relaxed as possible, but if your muscles are really tight, you yourself think you're relaxed, but your muscles aren't relaxed at all. So what's going to end up happening is your muscles are going to restrict the tendons, and they're like elastic bands. So when you restrict the tendons, it's going to ruin the amount of force they're able to produce. So it's like grabbing a resistance band or an elastic band and then like bending it and then forcefully throwing it on the ground. What's going to happen? There's not going to be any spring. There might be a tiny bit of spring, but there's not going to be a lot of spring because the resistance band or elastic band has been hindered. This movement is not being able to go through its natural range of motion, which means if you want to be able to get faster, we're going to have to improve our mobility so we can essentially loosen the muscles so they're able to move out of the way of the tendons naturally and be able to, so the tendons can do their work. Because once you're moving faster than 8 meters per second, which happens quite quickly, you're going to not be able to use your muscles anymore, but your tendons. And if you force yourself to use your muscles, well, what's going to happen? You're not going to be running as fast. And if you're moving at 8 meters per second, I think I calculated once to be around 12 seconds. And that would be at top speed. So if you really only use your muscles, you're probably not even be running that time. You'll probably be running slower, anywhere from 12 flat to 13 flat. Probably not that high, but anywhere within that range. If you're not within that range, and you're not masters, then there's a good chance that you have some bodily problem that you need to work out. Like one of the things I just listed is weak, very, very weak, or maybe you have a high body fat, which you need to work on, or there's a force issue. But other than that, if you work on your mobility, you're going to be able to improve the rate of force your body's actually able to do. The way the tendons work is they return their energy that they receive from you and the ground at a high percentage of around 90%, which means you're going to slow down in a race, but you're not going to be slowing down as much as you would be if you was to be using your muscles, which I think is something like 20 to 30% force return if you was to use your muscles, which is why you're only able to sprint so slowly with your muscles. But if you actually switch from your muscles to your tendons when it's possible, you're able to move faster. So now that's all the genetics talk out of the way. If you didn't really have much, you just blame genetics, but you didn't really have an indication of why people say genetics is why I'm not fast. All of these factors just listed are influences in genetics, and people could excuse lack of mobility, weak core strength, or hip flexors as a reason why their genetic support, as well as the gene for fast twitch muscle fibers. Which means now that these are all gone, we can actually get down to nitty-gritty as to why elite sprinters are actually able to sprint fast. And that's just because they put in more work than you, and the work they put in is done in a smarter format. They obviously didn't start fast. Like some started really slow, some started at 13 seconds, some started at 12. Usain Bolt started at 12. I don't remember what age he was, but he started off sprinting at 12 seconds. Don't know if it was flat or not, but it was 12. Which means they saw how slow they were. They knew how slow they were compared to the elite category, which was 10 flat or 9.99. But the difference is all of these doubts that they got, that as they went through their seasons, because it wasn't just, they didn't take them one season to get there, they went through seasons. All of these doubts, they just come into their head, and they're like, can I really pull this off? Can I really get to 10 flat or sub 10? Is my body even capable? Will I ever get onto the world stage? Then they ponder it for a while, and then it's like, okay, track sessions tomorrow, let's go. It's just that simple. Because I'm not gonna say no one who's trying to get faster to try and get to elite stages has never pondered the thought of, am I fast? Are my genetics gonna actually allow me to get fast? But the thing is, like the truly driven ones, they don't care, because even if they don't get their goal of sub 10, they can still get to 10 seconds, which is something I think anyone can do. At the very least, most people can. If you can't, you can at least get very close to 11 flat. And this is like a minority of people who I would say would not stand a chance of getting sub 11. But most people, I think, in their lifetime, as long as they're not in the masters, can get sub 11. Which means the real reason why these elite sprinters are where they are is just because they put in more work than you. They had a better mindset. They had doubts. Doubts came too, but they pushed through anyway. A good example of this, I would say, would be Su Bing-chan. You look at him, and he's a short sprinter. Like height-wise, he's very short. I don't think he broke 10 seconds for a very long time, ever. I mean, for the majority of his career, I don't think he broke 10 seconds. And then I think he broke it recently. And if I'm lying, okay. But I know he finally went sub 9.9 recently. That was in the I don't even know what Olympics. I guess it's 2020, but it happened 2021. So I'm just gonna say 2021 Olympics, where he in the semi-finals he purposely peaked early and ran a 9.86, and he treated it as the finals. And the reason why that was so big for him and the whole world, I like to assume, is because when you think about Su Bing-chan, you're like, this just 10, like sub 10 seconds is impossible. he's Asian, which means he's not black, so he doesn't really stand much of a chance. And if we look at the entirety of the sport, we will see that the people who hold the 100-meter world record, they went from white to black, and now it's just black people. And the people who get to the finals are mostly black, and some are white, and a very minority are Asian, if they even get to the finals, which means he was literally in the category of, this is impossible, you don't stand a chance. Yet he still managed to pull it off. He still went sub 10 by a lot, and he showed the world that it's possible. And he did a few different things to get it done, but this should go to show he spent years to pull it off, and he had millions of doubters, people that didn't think it was possible. And if you have millions of people that say to you it's not possible, after a while it will come into your head, maybe it isn't possible. But he pushed through, he didn't care, and he pulled it off. And now we look at Su Bing-Chan, we're like, yeah. By the end of the season, every season now, he's gonna go sub 10, guarantee. Why? Because he understood that his genetics weren't too big of a problem. They weren't as powerful as people made them out to be. And now that he showed himself and the world that that's true, he would expect more people, as well as I and everyone else, to go sub 10, even if you're not black. Or any race, to be honest. Doesn't matter what race you are, because now race shouldn't be a problem, because we've seen black people do it, white people do it, and now we've seen Asian people do it. So sub 10 is possible for people. It's just that some people just don't put in the work. They don't see as much progress as they want to, and they give up. There's various factors why your progress isn't as fast as you might want it to be. Maybe your coach isn't the best. Maybe your sprint training isn't the best because of that. Maybe you don't train smart in the gym. Maybe your plyos aren't good. There's various different things that could be affecting your sprint performance season by season, why you might not be able to improve as much as you want, improve at all, stagnate, or go backwards. But no matter what it is, once you understand that it's gonna take time, you're not gonna be breaking Usain Bolt's world record next year if you haven't even broke 12 seconds or 11 seconds, but you can get close. Not close, but you can start to pick up ground as long as you're smart in how you train and you individualize everything you do. Because there's no point in like, what works for me won't work for you. So if for me, all I need to do to run sub 10, like let's say I run 9.99, and all I need to do to run sub 10 is eat some eggs, eat chicken for dinner, skip lunch, eat a banana every now and then, do some pull-ups, do some explosive push-ups, like clapping push-ups and something, do like 30 bounds twice a week, sprint once a week, and then yeah, after a year I went sub 10, I ran 9.99, and then the next year I ran 9.8. That's the type of person that we don't want to think about, because that type of person would be an anomaly. But it doesn't matter what a person does, because that's not you. You need to know what you need to work on, your weaknesses. For most people, hip flexes are a good place to start, because most people have weak hip flexes. Why? Everyone sits down they probably sit down for sustained periods of time for longer than a month. So I know hip flexes for everyone is basically a problem, unless you specifically train your hip flexors. So that's a great place to start for everyone. That's always an area that you can improve on, as well as core. But if you want to get fast, make sure you actually look at your problems and don't just blame some external source that isn't really hindering you as much as you actually think it does, because your genetic potential is greater than you think. You've evolved like loads of people in history died, and you're essentially the best right now. And if you think it's impossible to become maybe not the best, but close to the best, then you're lying to yourself. Maybe a national level could be you if you don't manage to go international. But as long as you truly believe in yourself and you train smart, there's a good chance you can prove to yourself that your genetics aren't as big as a factor as you thought they were. And what was really hindering you is a poor mindset and poor training, and a combination of the two made sure you wasn't making any progress at all. So as long as you actually focus on trying to improve, and you don't blame other things, you take self-accountability and you try to improve yourself, the only way is up. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comments section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe, helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.